We got to talk about it. It's time that we talked about it. Several people have asked me, Byron, why did you leave education? And some people ask me, why did you sell your company? Well, it's time that we address it. I'm going to share why I made the very tough decision to leave the public school system. And I'm also going to share why I made the very tough decision to sell my company. Let's get right into it, y'all. To understand why I left public education, you got to understand what brought me into the field of education in the first place. If you watched the first video, I shared about how I made the switch from the field of clinical psychology to school psychology. After I made that switch, I actually moved back up to the DMV, which is home for me, and I started working in a district in Southern Maryland. Interesting fact, I was the first black male school psychologist hired in that district. And that's an experience all in and of itself, being the first of anything. And at that point, it was 2010, 2011, and I was the first black male school psychologist. And that's a tough thing. I carried it with honor because I felt that I was in a position to be the representation that so many kids who look like me, that they often didn't get an opportunity to see. I made the tough decision my fifth year and at the end of my fifth year to transition out of Charles County. I got a really cool opportunity to go to DC. When I first got there, I hit the ground running, implementing social emotional learning, several programs, working to implement with a really awesome team, restorative practices, and getting that off the ground and running inside of the school as well. And it was great. I loved it. I love my time working in Southern Maryland. I love my time working in DC as well. But in the midst of that, I also received my doctorate degree from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, or IUP for short. Shout out to IUP. I studied an investigation of Castle Select programs with youth of color from high poverty communities. And what I found in that research is that there weren't a lot of social emotional learning curriculums that were effective for youth of color, and especially youth of color from high poverty communities. And what I found is there just weren't that many programs that were doing that. One of the more interesting things that I found in my dissertation, in my research, was that there weren't a lot of programs. I mean, we're talking about a handful, up to 7, that were actually effective for youth of color from high poverty communities. What I mean by effective is that they improved outcomes for these youth. And by improving outcomes, there were 4 outcomes that I looked at. Did it improve pro-social behavior? Did it improve academic achievement? Did it reduce conduct problems? Did it reduce emotional distress? And out of all the research that Castle did, out of all the research that I did, the criteria that I set, there were only a handful of programs that actually met that criterion. And I took that to say, there aren't that many programs designed explicitly for youth of color from high poverty communities. The second problem that I found with these curriculums is that teachers don't have time. Educators don't have time to actually implement it. Even when they want to, they don't have the time. So I made the decision to create my own SEL curriculum. And I really wanted this curriculum to do several things. The first thing that I wanted to do, and my research showed, that people didn't have time. Even when they wanted to implement SEL curriculums, they didn't have the time to do that. So I wanted to address the time barrier. The second thing that I wanted to do for youth who have been historically marginalized, I wanted them to be represented in the literature. And I think that it's a major problem when youth who have been historically marginalized do not see themselves in curriculum. And so instead of complaining about it, instead of just saying, oh, that's a shame, I did something about it, and I created my own curriculum to address those 2 major issues that I saw. And I created this curriculum. It's called 6-Minute SEL, which was a play on time. 6 minutes to show, hey, you can implement this in a very quick way. And when I say I built this from the ground up, like I built it from the ground up, then put it out to the world and then started selling it from that first day I put it out. And it scaled and scaled and scaled. And what was really powerful about it, it started in the hands of teachers, of psychologists, of counselors, of social workers, and they will be implementing it And then a school leader would come and say, hey, what's that program? They would say a 6-minute SEL. And then it just grew. We were international and growing very rapidly. And all of this was back in only a few years ago, depending on when you hear this, around 2018, 2019 when it was created. And then the pandemic hit and the world shut down. This is a true story, and I tell it all the time. I was on my way to South by Southwest, which has always been a goal of mine. I had my bags packed, had my ticket. I was ready to go. And then I got this email notification. We regretfully have to inform you that South by Southwest, one of the biggest events, is canceled. It's canceled because of the pandemic in 2020. And I said, this is major. This is something that the world hasn't seen before. We don't know what we're about to experience. And so I was sad for a moment. I was in my feelings, but then I jumped into action. See, again, whenever I recognize a need, I have to respond to it. Why? Because my mission is to improve outcomes for youth. And I've always been on that mission. And so I saw that students who have been historically marginalized were going to be further disadvantaged by not having access and resources to the things that they need. And me recognizing that weekend, I took the curriculum that I had and I converted it into a video format and created the Lessons for SEL YouTube channel. And I was creating these god-awful videos that I was putting up on YouTube. And you could go now. And I put this video up. The video content was good and people were rocking with me, and I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. But that video was trash, and we could just say that it wasn't that good. But the content was good, and y'all knew my heart. One of my good colleagues, Tim, shout out to Tim McIver, he reached out to me and was like, hey man, the content is good, the video is good, transitions are all right. But you can improve on that audio. And when I go back and listen to it, I cringe. But those are things that I worked on over time. But the main point is I was putting out social emotional learning content that people needed. And I was putting that out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 7:30 a.m. every day during the pandemic. And people responded to that. And so my focus during that pandemic was just putting out content so that people could have access to it, especially those who might be historically marginalized. And then one day I took my son to get his hair braided, and I'm sitting there and I get this call from this guy, and he's asking me all of these questions about my business, about my company. And then I'm pausing, I'm thinking, I'm like, man, this must be the IRS. I know I just paid my tax, or I'm about to pay my taxes. I know I paid my taxes last year. But then come to find out his name was Scott Schickler, one of the co-creators of this company called 7 Mindsets. We landed on a partnership where it made sense based off of Lessons for SEL, the 6-minute SEL curriculum that I had developed, the video content that I had developed. It made sense to merge and join forces. And my company, Lessons for SEL, merged and was acquired by 7 Mindsets. I'm going to do a future video on 7 Mindsets, the company, what the actual 7 Mindsets are. Our mission, our vision aligned. Scott is a visionary. He is a man of his word, and he built the company around that. And what I really appreciate about the 7 Mindsets is that it's a way of life. It's a way to envision your future. And if you live by these mindsets, it can be transformative and it can improve outcomes for youth, which is, again, always been my mission. While this is happening, I'm still working inside of the public school system as well, which is a really funny time because, again, it's still in the face of a pandemic and we're doing really transformative work with the school redesign. I had a very tough choice that I had to make. It was a very tough decision. I spoke it over with my wife, and it wasn't just like a one-time conversation. There were many conversations from the business angle with me and my team of people who I had to have conversations with to make sure that it made sense from a business standpoint, from a financial standpoint. Then speaking with my wife, like that was a major decision that was going to be life-changing, and I had to wrestle with that. I also had to wrestle with the work being done inside of the schools. And at that point, I'm 11, 12 years working inside of the public school system. And I have to make a decision. Do I continue working, forging a path forward? Do I continue growing lessons for SEL on the side while working inside the public school system? Or do I take a risk? Do I take a shot? Do I take a humongous leap of faith and say, hey, I'm going to step aside from the public school and go full steam ahead with this curriculum and building this thing? And I made the very tough decision to leave the public school and join 7 Mindsets. And the thing that I also really struggle with is, to be clear, the work, the students, the young people, man, that was tough. You build relationships, you build connections, and you work in an area that has tremendous needs. And to think that you're abandoning the work, but you're abandoning them, the people, the families, the students, that was tough. But with all things considered, I made the choice to leave the public school system and join 7 Mindsets full time. And so after I made the choice to leave the public school system, I joined on as the Director of Innovation for 7 Mindsets. And I've actually been working with them for about 1.5 years now, doing some really awesome things, seeing the impact that I can have contributing to a larger company, but helping this mission and my mission, which has always been to improve outcomes for youth of color, and doing that at scale. So now I'm not only working with students from Southeast DC or Maryland or PG County. I'm working with kids in Wisconsin, in Oklahoma, in California, and across the country. I'm super blessed to be able to do that. This is only video number 2, y'all. We have a lot of discussions and conversations to talk about. Make sure you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button right now and stay tuned, y'all. Hit the like and let's help this channel grow. Until next time, peace.